Well, hello. Welcome to yet another fine episode of the Backpack Show Live. I'm your solo host today, Chris Brogan, because my co-host Carrie is a little under the weather, maybe kind of a lot under the weather, but she'll make it through. I'm so sad not to have her at my side to do this show with me, but I will cry my tears on the work of strategy because I have Michael Lenox. He's going to talk to us about strategy in the digital age. We have all kinds of really interesting stuff to talk about. I try never to do a pre-interview, but I couldn't help myself because this is nerd stuff. So we're going to talk digital strategy, cool stuff. Get your drink, come right back. I don't want that intro.
Hi everyone, Tim Kitzrow from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, welcoming you to The Backpack Show. Your hosts, Chris Brogan, Carrie Gargone, Boom Shakalaka.
Backpack Show.
I miss seeing my buddy Jesse Cole from the Savannah Bananas. I wanted to see his version of the show. Hey, look who showed up. It is my mom. Happy birthday to my mom today. My mother's birthday is today, the August 4th day. There she is calling in from Las Vegas. She is married to evidently my father, who maybe he hasn't even showed up today. Who knows? We'll find out. But welcome on to the Backpack Show. I'm going to drag Michael out here really quick, but first I just wanted to let you know a couple things, and I almost forgot to do my sponsor read. So, want some StreamYard? Get some StreamYard. You can make a show. You could probably make a show better than my dumb attempts. Make a show. Go to cbrogan.net/StreamYard. Find your own digital strategy wizard. Hey, want your own .online domain? Who doesn't? 99 cents for the first year, 99 US cents. That's like $8 Canadian. Go to cbrogan.net/online. You can get it. Use the code Chris any way you want because Carrie's not here to correct me. Hey, we're going to talk about a book today. Strategy in the Digital Age by Michael Lenox. I love the design for another reason. You don't know that Michael already wrote a book on strategy in 2013 with chess pieces. So this is the digital night. It brings it all together. It ties it up. Let's see who wandered in. Here's Chloe. Here's Kate Colgan wishing happy birthday. Chloe, happy birthday. Fazia's here, of course. My dad made it in. Good to see you. You probably had to stop for a drink. Good to see you. Probably got a good double cup of coffee going. Michael Lenox, welcome to this horrible, bad idea that you have said of coming on our show. Welcome on board the Backpack Show. Why write this book? Is it the call back to your 2013 book, or is it because, this is pretty important stuff there, Doctor?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. And second of all, happy birthday to your mother. So I feel very honored that I'm on your mom's birthday's episode.
Special birthday episode.
Yeah.
Even Bob from Vermont showed up, and that's here. It's a big day.
Yeah, no, excellent. Well, to your question, so I teach MBAs at the Darden School of Business, and I have taught an elective called Strategy in the Digital Age for probably going on about 5 years now. And it's always been an interest and a passion of mine around digital technology. I teach business strategy, so the interface between the two kind of made natural sense for me. So this is a book that I've been kind of wanting to write for a while, and finally got around to it and got it out in the world. And so I'm really excited to share kind of some of my thoughts with the world on that.
You are teaching digital strategy. So now there's a few things on the go for this, which is that sometimes people don't understand that there can be a difference or maybe must be a difference in digital strategy. There's two ways I think of that. One is that, companies say, that we don't need to think about that. No matter what, I don't know, we're a waste management company. Why would we ever think that we need anything digitized? I'm of the mind that if someone doesn't want me in the door, I never try to convince my way in the door. But when you're teaching that course, do you cover that at all? Do you talk about how to get people to even think about the start of the transformation?
Well, the first thing I say is, the kind of fundamental strategy thinking, the strategist toolkit, as you mentioned at the beginning there, it still applies in the digital era. However, there are some really interesting kind of things we need to highlight about the digital era. The other thing I would say, and I found this from all the companies I work with and talk to, I have yet to find an industry that is not being impacted by digital strategy or by digital transformation. And one of the core points in the book, this is more than just kind of getting your IT operation in order here. This is really often having fundamental impacts on the nature of competition in different industries. It's kind of fundamentally changing the ways firms compete. And I would even say, in your example of the trash business, waste hauling business, there are probably ways in which digital transformation might, again, fundamentally change the way that business is operating. And so I think it's imperative that companies and businesses and organizations of all types really start to think deeply about what the technology is now allowing for.
I want to go really nerdy on this for a second. And that's only because at my company, I work at a software company where we have all kinds of apps. We work in mostly enterprise B2B. 55% of the Fortune 500 are our customer. And you would think, and we would believe, that we're pretty clever about things like, our data. We thought, we know some stuff. We've got all kinds of information. I will tell you that when we implemented true data science, when we brought real data scientists and data tools like Snowflake and these other kinds of tools that are like the, gold standard industry stuff, it was quite interesting, our own transformation that we didn't anticipate. We had this person come and just start, in a way, the way we looked at it was just like, he wired us for so much knowledge and intelligence that we just learned how to start asking better questions. Do you find that happens too? Is like, if a company thinks they're too big for their britches, they can run into this problem?
Yeah, I mean, one of the interesting things that's happening is the way in which we collect data, and that data then provides insights and maybe creates new ways we can create value for our customers and the like, creates a reinforcing loop, if you will. So I make the analogy that it's a little bit like building an on-ramp onto a highway, and that once you build that data analytics on-ramp to a highway, you're off and going. And so for a lot of companies, if they're slow to build that on-ramp, it's going to be very hard to catch up to those who are ahead of you. So it really becomes imperative to kind of get your act together on this, because again, the learning that's occurring iteratively in real time and very rapidly in some cases is pushing some companies and organizations way down that highway. And it's going to be hard for others to catch up.
We went really fast too, and one of the things that we noticed is that there was sort of what we thought we were going to need and what we thought we were going to ask, and what happens when the rubber meets the road. That's a part of strategy I find too. I'm fond of quoting Mike Tyson. Everyone has a strategy until they get punched in the mouth. So
my favorite version of that actually comes from Eisenhower, former president, former head of the armed forces, who said, strategy is useless because once you get onto the battlefield, the strategy falls apart. But strategic planning is invaluable because it's the act of going through the strategy process that allows you to pivot when you're on the battlefield and conditions are changing and the like. And I'm a big advocate that strategy is not static. It is a dynamic process of constant reflection and referral. And you have to pivot in this digital age, maybe quite frequently, as conditions change, as technologies evolve, as competition evolves.
I'm going to throw that one up there as an actual banner, because I think strategy is not static is a pretty powerful takeaway. I never do this kind of thing, and I least of all write little takeaways. So that's all you're getting. All right. Cody, a colleague of mine who I was just happy enough to have dinner with the other night. What are some of the biggest gaps you see in people in thinking from digital strategy to traditional strategy? I think your Eisenhower quote kind of starts this going too, because how different is it? What do people have to think or otherwise do?
Well, I think we're talking, we already hit upon some of these, right? So what we have now is a world awash in data. That ubiquity of data is allowing for some of these higher order analytical techniques to be quite powerful. We were talking before the podcast about how, I was a student back in the early 90s in systems engineering, and I was learning things like neural networks and machine learning way back then. But we lacked two things. We didn't have the processing power that we have today, and we certainly didn't have the size of the data sets that we have today that really been fostered by the internet and Internet of Things and the like. So you're suddenly finding that the huge volume of what's available is allowing for these techniques to be as powerful as they are. That has some real strategic implications. So one of the things, using my economics speak, but we talk about network externalities. So this idea that the value of a good or service improves as others start to consume it. So if you look at something like social media and the like, the more people use social media, the more valuable it becomes. That's creating some of these dynamics where you're getting, in some extreme cases, winner take all markets, that those who get out there, collect a lot of data, improve their algorithms, improve their analytics, are able to create so much more value than others that they start to run away with the market. And that's not universal. Not every market is a winner take all market, but the potential of that is having implications across a lot of different markets. We're seeing, as a result, the rise of platforms in all different parts of the world and businesses. So this is everything from your Apple, OS to Uber, or any number of two-sided market makers like Airbnb. We're a world awash in platforms that are having implications across a lot of different industries.
That's our entire business model. So what we did was we worked and partnered with the Atlassian ecosystem, those lovely people in Australia. They opened up a marketplace kind of environment and said, "Hey, you want to do some of this?" And we had a couple of apps, but then we acquired all of the best apps in the platform. So we're 30-ish% of the entire marketplace now. Now we're starting in places like Monday.com. We have Salesforce, some Microsoft Azure DevOps. In every case, what we do is there's standalone apps, but then there's also stuff that we can make that's going to just sort of improve or tweak an app in a certain way. So to your point, I want to pivot entirely because I feel like the kinds of things you must get dragged into in between talking just about the book strategy in the digital age, AI, everyone is talking about it everywhere. And I'm getting a little fussy. I'm getting about the same sort of feeling I got when in marketing, everybody said I needed a Facebook strategy. And I think the reason I feel that is just because AI is not a strategy. The strategy might as well be, how are you going to implement or not implement or react to it? Can you talk a little bit about how you approach that and how you teach your students as well?
Yeah, I mean, I am a believer that AI is going to be, and it is disruptive, and disruptive across a large number of industries. I think it's also very true to say that we're at that point in the hype cycle where there's a lot of rhetoric out there that I question. It seems like every company now on their earnings calls has to mention their AI strategy, and a lot of it seems very ill-informed. I think thinking through where it's going to actually impact, where it can create value, is going to be the key question that a lot of companies have to struggle with. And one of the main points in the book is to think through, kind of strategy 101, but competitive positioning. Like, okay, this is a new technology, has some value. What does it mean for you, and how does it impact where you should position yourself in the market? I like to say that I run into a ton of companies that talk about, oh, we're going to be the Google of X, right? Now everyone's going to be, we're the OpenAI of X or the Chat GPT of X. And I sit back and I'm like, no, you're not. Like, these other tech companies are actually far better positioned than you to achieve that position. So you need to go back to the board and rethink, what do you do uniquely well that you can lever and maybe use these technologies to find a kind of a valuable position in the marketplace here. Not everybody is going to be, Uber AI, large language model based company here. In fact, I think it's going to be a fair small set that really are able to capture this technology.
In your book, you talked a little bit about some of the policy changes. I think this is, it's going to always be timely, but I was thinking about things like the SAG-AFTRA strike, where the people in Hollywood are saying, hey, there's some real legitimate stuff going on here. Don't look at us like a bunch of, sad, rich millionaires out here. We're, there's ways that people are going to rethink our rights. There's James Earl Jones sold the artificial intelligence rights to his entire image and likeness and everything in his whatever. So now there was a 1980s movie with Albert Finney called Looker, which it was like a horror premise.
I remember this movie. I'm old enough to remember Looker. Yeah, no. It's and now we have more recent examples. I'm a big Black Mirror fan, but they have Joan is Awful. It's one of the new episodes they dropped, which goes exactly to this possibility and to this point.
The question, I guess, on that is, let me just give you a question to work off, because I only just gave you feedback. But the question I have off that, though, is that, part of your book talks about this policies and the like, just to sort of get at things we really maybe haven't predicted yet. How do you counsel people in that direction?
Yeah, I mean, that's a broader question. Let's talk specifically about AI first, and then we can talk more broadly. There's a lot of rhetoric right now about AI, replacing everybody's job. And you go all the way back to the original Luddites, who were mill workers in England, who found that the new, machines coming in were taking their jobs, and they destroyed the machines. Fortunately, what we've seen over the last 150 years plus is that often in the wake of technology disruption, new jobs are created, and hopefully, we keep going along with employment and the like. I think what AI is going to do is it's not going to necessarily eliminate, these whole classes of jobs, but it's going to allow those who are kind of at the top of the pyramid, if you will, to be that much more productive. So if you're a lawyer, let's say, you're not going to need this team of kind of junior associates to help do the grunt work. You can leverage AI to do that for you. And now you can deal with 10x the number of clients that are out there. And so as a result, I do worry about inequality, that we're going to even more move to kind of a winner take all from a labor market standpoint, that those who kind of excel, again, Taylor Swift is going to be fine in a generative AI world. It's not clear to me that those kind of struggling at the base of the music industry are going to be well served by this. So in terms of signing over your digital rights, I think it's going to be an interesting set of questions. But that might be at the very top of the market, right? It's more at the lower ends of the market. What does that mean? And one of the challenges you see the musicians talking about this is like, well, wait a minute, if you build your model off of my music, I should be compensated. What I think is not fully appreciated is that those learning models are not training it off of your music. They're training it off often, thousands, if not millions of pieces of art that are out there. So what are your specific claims to that AI generated music? I think that's going to be very hard to assert. If people are paying attention to the recent lawsuit that, I'm forgetting his name, out of England, who was sued by Marvin Gaye's family for appropriating some of the music. Ed Sheeran.
Right.
He had a fascinating defense, which was, hey, if you're going to accuse me of plagiarizing this one chord structure, there are literally hundreds of other songs that leverage that same chord structure. Like, you can't claim that as IP.
Right.
Now you think about what generative AI is doing. It's using, again, potentially thousands and thousands of songs. It's going to be very hard to make claims here. So I don't know if it's going to be Selma Hayek necessarily. It could be some agglomeration of Selma Hayek and 100 other actresses that creates a new actress, if you will. And I don't know if there'll be much, IP claims on that.
Elizabeth's pointing out some of the other possibly unintended consequences. The AI is my assistant now, so I no longer use offshore resources. And with the plugins, there's some very interesting use cases. There are some people who are doing what would amount to sort of mechanical Turk work to sort of pull some last mile humanity, and it's not going to be as necessary in certain ways. I think there's some downstream rethinking that has to happen a lot in these models. Do you get into that ever, like with clients or your class?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think these, what I'll call even ethical issues, are so important. And one of my main messages to my students and to executives I work with is simply to recognize that, right? Like you've got to be explicit. What are your values as an organization or as an individual? What do you feel comfortable with? What do you not feel comfortable with? And it's hard. In a competitive environment, you'll hear these arguments like, if we don't do it, somebody else will. You can see Google and Microsoft struggling with that dimension there. But I think that even puts more of a primacy on being explicit of what your values are and what lines you are going to draw on use and development of the technology. Huge issues around data privacy in a lot of these spaces. What do you feel comfortable using, and to what ends on people's data? If you're not aware, right, already out there, the large tech companies are not only harvesting a lot of your personal data to customize ads and the like to you, they're also trying to actively shape your preferences. They've hired legions of PhDs in psychology to think about, what we call behavioral nudges to get you to like one product or another. That's a slippery slope, and it's one that I think is not easily regulated. I think, I will share that I think some of the regulation discussion coming out of DC, we'll see, but the initial signs are not very positive in my mind, in the sense that it seems like it's all kind of BS. And it's going to fall on some of the private actors to be good citizens, if you will.
Right. I get the feeling sometimes too that some of the people trying to decide the fate of the future are people who, if you went to their house, there's still like a blinking 12 on their VHS. So I'm a little
Right.
scared that
Right.
that's my, future boss.
Right.
I had a very personal experience with this. I think it was around 2019, might have been 2018, where I was helping try to roll out an augmented reality technology. And what we were saying is, this is such a great training system. You put the goggles on, or you can even just use a tablet. But we'll help you like rebuild your ship engines at like a naval yard or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was really peppy. And then this guy politely pulled me aside. He goes, "Do you know that we still have physically paper blueprints in our office?" And I went, "Oh." I said, "Aha." And then he said, "And we have things going like there's a bolt called the M1412, and it's been about 9 different bolts, even all that they're called the same name. So it's like a data abstraction. There's the word M191412 or whatever it was, but it doesn't mean the same thing for different applications. And there's like one human who knows this, and he's trying to teach this other guy before he retires." And I said, "Oh, so what you're saying is you don't need AR helmets." Do you think, William Gibson, the author, famously said the future is here, it's just not evenly distributed.
Yeah.
Tim O'Reilly loves that quote. He used to put it on some of his podcasts. One of my friends made a whole show about it called Distributing the Future. Do you think that challenge, is the gap narrowing on this, or are we just forever going to be in this cycle of not having a clue what people are talking about?
Well, I think this gets back to my analogy of getting on the highway, because what often happens with, let's just talk about the basic blocking and tackling of a digital transformation, right? Let's get your data in order to be able to be utilized for higher order analytics. Often what happens is you learn pretty quickly that, data exists in pockets throughout the organization. It's a source of power often. So who controls the data has certain power in the organization. So you hit resistance across the board. But then once you're able to bring it together, you start to then improve the data. To your point about the bolt, then you realize, oh, we need to have a better system for recognizing these different pieces there, and that's where you go into a learning and improvement cycle. And sometimes that effort in of itself is quite hard and substantial for companies to get through before they even get to like applying AI to what they're doing. Just literally getting their data organized and speaking to one another, maybe in a data lake, leveraging the cloud. Basic digital infrastructure can be a huge lift for especially a lot of long-standing established companies.
We touched on this, and I don't know how deep I want to go. I probably don't, but we touched on the idea that, for instance, people were saying, "Hey, you're training your people off my art," and it's like, well, no, it's weirder. We're doing it off thousands of people's art. This was already kind of being hinted at, this sort of fair use policy and those sorts of things. There were all kinds of scenarios where, and I'm blanking on his name, had already started kind of some of this business on the legality of sampling, on the legality of how much of a piece of art has to still exist, like the ship of Theseus almost in rights. This gets crazier with things like regulation, like GDPR, like being able to sample people's content for other uses than the intended. We say we're going to use your data just so we can reach you again.
Yeah.
There's a kind of a mire. Does that mean that there are roles available to navigate this, or are companies going to just throw this on the already overworked burdens of other leadership parts of the organization? If so, who is going to be the right person to do this, and who do you think is going to get saddled with it more often inside of mid to larger size companies?
Or yeah, I mean, one of the points I make in the book is it's just a fact of life that companies participate in the political process. So when it comes to regulatory setting and the like, they're influencing it quite explicitly. And by the way, companies are not always in agreement amongst themselves about what's the right path forward. And we might bemoan that involvement in business and in our politics, but it is a fact of life that we have to just recognize. Things like privacy, data privacy, and data ownership. The different tech players have actually very different perspectives on this. So if you take a Google or a Facebook or an Alphabet / Meta, most of their revenue is still based on advertising. And for them, these get to fundamental issues of their business model. Take someone like Apple, they're a little bit different. They make their money largely still today on selling you an iPhone, right? That's where the majority of their revenue and income comes from. For them, they can be a little more protective of your data rights and your digital rights, because for them, it's just about improving your experience with their products that they're selling to you. So again, your strategy actually drives to some extent where you fall on some of these important policy issues. And it's important to recognize, like, the policy environment does usually kind of co-evolve with the technology and the industry as it moves forward. I always like to point out, when the first automobiles came out, the horseless carriage, lots of wrangling about, like, man, these cars are going to spook the horses. They're going to, run over pedestrians. They're a death trap. And what happened? Well, there's a whole bunch of things we didn't have. We didn't have things like stoplights. We didn't have all the rules of the road that eventually arose to make this new technology viable in our world. I suspect the same will happen with AI and what's happening with digital technology, but it's going to be messy. It's going to be contested. There will be various competing interests trying to influence that direction. That's just the way these things tend to play out.
When someone asks me to talk about the future, I usually get a little bit run around the, I'm into the things I'm interested in the future are not super interesting to talk about, like sensors. I want much more ubiquitous sensors. I want to be doing much more clever things. I want to just recreate the scene in Blade Runner with, like, a smarter house, like turn on my damn lights, so I don't want anything super fussy. Is there an area of the future, not even if it's related to the book or anything, but is there a part of the future you like to think about and kind of like fantasize and geek out about, or even just that you're like, this is, if I had to devote my next 10 years on one piece of the future, the way you, with your tools, what would you think?
Right, so I'm going to punt on this in two ways. So
Okay.
One of the things I always tell my students is, if I could predict the future of technology, I'd be living on my own island that I purchased at this point. So don't take my predictions, any more than you would take anybody else's predictions. And
Good.
more to the point, and this is something I do highlight right in chapter 1 of the book,
Yeah.
is that we have seen this exponential growth of 3 core technologies over literally the last 40, 50 years. Processing power, which is commonly called Moore's Law after Gordon Moore from Intel. Bandwidth, especially as we see now 5G and other things coming down the pipeline. And then storage, especially now represented by cloud storage and the like. If those trends continue, that we continue to see exponential improvement in those 3 core technologies over the next, let's say, decade, the world will be radically different than it is today. And I say that to say, I don't know. I don't think anybody really knows what it's going to look like 10 years from now. And I always like point out, I have a smartwatch here from Garmin. It has the processing power of a Cray 2 supercomputer from the 1980s, right? That's exponential growth for you. So for businesses, my recommendation is you're not going to be able to predict where this is going to go. You need to be nimble. Your strategy goes back to being dynamic here. You have to be a learning organization. I talk about humility. You have to have some humility when it comes to technology, because you will not know exactly how this is going to play out. I mean, look at the last 3 years, right? 3 years ago, we were all talking about crypto and blockchain. Last year, we were all talking about the metaverse and, the coming, transformation there. And now it's all really, since like November, generative AI and large language models, right? So I'm punting on your question by saying I have no idea where we'll be in 10 years from now. My only prediction is I think it will be radically different than the world we're in right now. And there are things like autonomy. It's been talked about for a while. It continues to improve, but we could be living in a world with lots of autonomous vehicles out there. Clearly, the way generative AI is evolving and it's improving so quickly right now. Again, I think the world could be radically different in 10 years.
Well, speaking as a large language model, I'm really not allowed to have an opinion on that one, but we're going to get to the other last parts of our show. And then one of them is this.
Oh, and here's our person of the day. Kaboom!
Okay, there's no one else who could be the person of the day. It has to be my mom. It's her birthday. So maybe instead of an apple, we'll give you some cake, Mom. I think that's totally fine. Happy birthday. Actually, the rumor is that there's going to be birthday Mexican food. So remain to be seen on that one, but that's the deal there. I did forget to prep you on one thing though, so we'll see how this goes. But there's one question that we've asked everybody on the show, from Sister Anne Flanagan to Mistress Harley to Sir Mix-a-Lot himself. We asked the question, what goes in your backpack? This could be something metaphorical. It could be something physical. You could say hope for the future. You can say an avocado. Michael Lenox, author of Strategy in the Digital Age. What are we sticking in the backpack?
Well, first of all, I'm not nearly as interesting of all the other people you've had on here, so that puts more pressure on me to come up with
a lot of pressure
to come up with something that's really really interesting here. What do I put in my backpack? Oh boy.
Well, I could tell you, DJ Cummerbund had an extra set of teeth, so that was pretty unique.
Yeah. I mean, as a family man, I kind of go back to things that would involve my family. Can I put my family in the backpack?
You can put your family in the backpack.
You put my family in the backpack.
We had an absolutely unintentional, super burst out laugh because our friend from Buy From a Black Woman said she wanted to put women in her backpack, and it sounded like trafficking. And then she and my co-host Carrie laughed so hard that we accidentally upset our other guest, Ariel Helvetica, the burlesque dancer. So now Carrie has, ever since, for almost a year now, had to answer kindness as one of the samples. So I think your family's a great thing to go in the backpack.
Okay. I'll stick with that one.
Family's a great one. I have a great family. I have my mom's birthday today. It makes me think of all the other people in the family. I get really lucky because, I get to think about all the great birthdays. I'll tell you, my family had one particular birthday cake. I don't know if you have this, but there's the one family cake that you have to have. Let me tell you what it is in my family. First off, it involves the product off the grocery store shelf, pistachio flavored Jello pudding. The rest of it, but it's